Keith Haring action paintings. Starting with your tinfoil person, begin arranging them into either the first or the last pose you need to show your action. I am doing my character dunking a basketball, so I am positioning them in the last step. They are up in the air, they have jumped, and they have just released the ball from their hand. After I position it, I am holding it against my paper and tracing it lightly. You should not press hard with your pencil at this point, and it is okay to rearrange the tinfoil a little bit so that you can get around the shape of the leg. The most important part at this step is the pose. Your sketch doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to get the position of the legs, arms, and body figured out. After I finish tracing, I am going back in and refining my pose. So I am fixing the shape of my head. I am turning the leg shape and adding feet to it. And I am just finishing off my sketch into a nicer shape. Then I am positioning my next pose when my person has jumped up in the air and has the ball in their hands. So I'm adjusting their arms and legs to match, and I'm tracing it again. Still, I am focusing on the pose, so I need to make sure I'm getting around the arms and head. The pose is the most important part. The sketch doesn't have to be perfect. I am also letting my character overlap with the first sketch, as you can see here, and I'm going to keep that overlapping as I adjust my shape, add in those feet again, and get it to a shape I am happy with. Finally, I am going to make my last pose or my first pose, depending how you want to look at it, before my person jumps up. So they are kind of running with the ball before jumping up. And again, I am tracing out my pose carefully, focusing on the position of the legs and the arms, knowing that I can make adjustments to exactly how my character is positioned later. I'm refining the head, adding in a little bit more of a curve, putting in the feet again, and then I am making sure I add the actual basketball into each one of my poses. This is also a good time to add any scenery or accessories you want in the background. I am going to put in a floor line to create a ground, and later you will see I am putting in a basketball net as well. Finally, when you are happy with all your lines, you are going to carefully trace them out in Sharpie. You can still let your characters overlap like you see here, but make sure you are only tracing over the lines that you want to keep. So if there is a spot where you don't want them to overlap, do not trace them overlapping with the Sharpie. Just focus on the lines that you are happy with. You can also Sharpie any of your background details and scenery pieces. When you start painting, make sure you get a color palette that is the opposite of your paper. So my paper is a warm color. I'm grabbing paint that is a cool color. When you are painting, make sure you are painting right up to the Sharpie line. Make sure you are not leaving any paper in between the Sharpie and the paint. It's okay if you overlap the Sharpie. We can draw it back in later. Where your colors overlap, you are fine to paint right over top, but we are going to go over how to exactly to paint those overlapping spaces in the next clip. Now where the characters overlap, you can see one is painted blue, one is painted green. So where the two figures overlap, I am going to mix the blue and the green that I used for each one to paint just that overlapping section. Using the center of the palette, I'm mixing a nice teal, which is right in between that blue and that green, and I'm going to use that color to paint where the foot and the leg overlap. Now you might notice that the Sharpie is really getting covered up here a lot, but remember we are going to redo the Sharpie at the end of the project.